India is now at the precipice of a historic transformation in air power projection, with recent revelations regarding the possible induction or lease of the US B-1B Lancer bomber into Indian service, signaling a decisive shift in the nation's strategic doctrine. The arrival of a B-1B Lancer at Bengaluru Airport in November 2025 was more than a symbolic gesture. It was a clear indication that discussions between the United States and India have reached a level of maturity where the possibility of the B-1B serving under the Indian tricolor is being openly considered by both governments. The Indo-US partnership has grown to encompass unprecedented operational synergies, especially visible in joint air drills, where the B-1B has flown alongside frontline Indian fighters like the Rafale and Su-30 MKI. The B-1B Lancer bomber, the backbone of America's high-speed deep strike capability since its introduction in the 1980s, represents a quantum leap in payload, range, and mission flexibility over India's existing strike platforms. Unlike tactical bombers that typically focus on battlefield interdiction or close air support, the B-1B belongs to the exclusive club of strategic bombers designed to penetrate enemy airspace, survive advanced air defenses, and deliver a knockout blow against command centers, air bases, and high-value infrastructure. Indian war doctrine, traditionally reliant on fighter-bomber combinations and limited strategic reach, has evolved with pressing regional threats. Prior doctrines emphasized crossing the international border to deliver punitive raids or launch conventional ground offensives. Today, the specter of nuclear retaliation, coupled with advanced Pakistani and Chinese air defenses, has led India to develop a doctrine based squarely on standoff, deep precision attacks. This paradigm shift saw its operational validation in recent years, particularly after the Pahalgam attack and subsequent Operation Sindoor, which established India's willingness and capability to retaliate with long-range, precision missile strikes against terrorist safe havens inside Pakistan, without troop incursions across the LOC or IB. The procurement of B-1B Lancers dovetails perfectly with the new Indian emphasis on standoff force projection. The bomber's massive payload, variable sweep wing for supersonic ingress and egress, and advanced avionics enable it to launch a range of guided bombs and long-range cruise missiles well outside hostile airspace. For India, which currently relies primarily on Su-30 MKI to launch solitary BrahMos supersonic missiles, the leap to B-1B bombers exponentially increases both the volume and variety of standoff weapons at its disposal. The B-1B's adaptability permits carriage of up to 75,000 pounds of munitions, a mix of GPS-guided joint direct attack munitions, JDAMs, gliding small-diameter bombs, anti-runway penetrators, and most critically, long-range cruise missiles such as the AGM-158 JASSM, Joint Air-to-Surface Standoff Missile, and its navalized variant, the LRASM, Long-Range Anti-Ship Missile. The JASSM offers stealthy, terrain-following precision strikes out to ranges between 370 and 1,000 kilometers, with the LRASM extending standoff strikes against ships or maritime infrastructure, capability highly relevant in the Indo-Pacific context. Further, developmental hypersonic missiles and outsized standoff munitions may become accessible as U.S.-India defense cooperation deepens, keeping India technologically ahead of regional adversaries. India's interest in the B-1B comes as Russian Tu-95 and Tu-160 bombers have demonstrated the effectiveness of standoff missile attacks in Ukraine. Russian bombers launching waves of cruise and ballistic missiles from inside friendly airspace have consistently degraded Ukrainian infrastructure, targeted command bunkers, and forced dispersal of Ukrainian air defenses. For instance, Russian Tu-160 bombers have launched Kh-101 and Kh-555 cruise missiles, as well as supersonic Kh-22 anti-ship missiles, in a manner that keeps the launch platforms miles away from interception risk. Using this as a template, India envisages a doctrine where hostile airspace is never entered, and the risk to pilots and billion-dollar assets is drastically minimized. Indian bombers, operating from bases deep inside the subcontinent or from forward-deployed airfields in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, can target terrorist facilities, missile depots, or enemy command centers in Pakistan or even Western China with hypersonic, supersonic, or stealth cruise missiles, offering complete surprise, velocity, and assured destruction. Historically, famous bomber-led standoff attacks have shaped military outcomes worldwide. In World War II, US B-29 bombers conducted devastating strikes against the Japanese home islands, culminating in the Hiroshima and Nagasaki attacks. During Operation Desert Storm, B-52 Stratofortresses rained down cruise missiles on Iraqi infrastructure, notably the Highway of Death, leveraging standoff capabilities to break the enemy's will. More recently, B-1B bombers in U.S. operations over Kosovo and Afghanistan launched precision JDAMs and JASSMs, crippling enemy command centers without ever crossing into heavily defended airspace. Comparatively, India's acquisition of the B-1B is revolutionary. The bomber can launch dozens of guided weapons, including standoff munitions over 1,000 kilometers away, against hardened targets such as nuclear bunkers, airfields, or logistics nodes, all without risking exposure to enemy fighters or surface-to-air missiles. The B-1B's onboard synthetic aperture radar, fully integrated targeting pods, and real-time battlefield data links ensure ultra-precise strikes even in adverse weather or electronic warfare environments. Potential Indian cruise missile fits for the B-1B could include BrahMos NG, providing supersonic standoff options out to 300 kilometers with anti-ship and land attack capabilities. Nirbhay, India's indigenous subsonic cruise missile, capable of striking targets over 1,000 kilometers away, with terrain-hugging flight profiles. U.S. origin AGM-158 JASSM or LRASM, if permitted under Indo-U.S. technology transfer, extending the reach and survivability against advanced air defenses. Hypersonic glide vehicles under development, potentially paired with U.S. modular pylons designed for heavy-class guided munitions. Such an arsenal multiplies the Indian strike potential, allowing for massed coordinated attacks with deep penetration, electronic jamming, and multi-axis launches. Operationally, this means Indian planners can exact a devastating cost on enemy C4I, command, control, communications, computers, intelligence, air defense radars, missile bases, and troop concentrations at the push of a button, in a deterrence-by-punishment paradigm. In contrast to legacy doctrines focused on territorial incursion or ground combat, India's new doctrine is codified by proportional retaliation focused on strategic precision. Operation Sindoor marked a major shift, where Indian Rafale and Su-30 MKI fighters launched standoff weapons against terror camps in Pakistan, sending a message that state sponsorship of terror would meet immediate, overwhelming military response. The B-1B Lancer dramatically enhances both the scale and the credibility of this doctrine, acting as a visible deterrent against both state and non-state adversaries. At a strategic level, B-1Bs also address Indian security concerns vis-à-vis China. The bombers, intercontinental range, rapid sortie generation, and ability to carry anti-ship missiles empower India to project force deep into the Western Pacific, targeting Chinese naval bases, amphibious task forces, or strategic infrastructure within the second island chain, without deploying carrier strike groups or risking surface ships. Famous B-1B strikes that have defined standoff bombing doctrines include the opening hours of the 2003 Iraq War, when B-1Bs dropped GPS-guided JDAMs against high-value targets in Baghdad, disrupting Iraqi command and control networks and forcing rapid disintegration. During operations in Syria, B-1B bombers have repeatedly employed JASSM and JDAM munitions against ISIL leadership bunkers, weapons factories, and supply depots, all struck from far outside Syrian airspace thanks to standoff missile technology. Likewise, Russia's bomber arsenal, relying on Tu-95 and Tu-160 platforms launching Kh-101 cruise missiles from deep within Russian territory, has produced devastating effects against Ukraine, targeting both military and civilian infrastructure. These strikes reflect a focus on attrition, demoralization, and coercion through sustained standoff attacks, with low attrition rates and high operational efficiency. For India, integrating the B-1B into the IAF fleet streamlines logistics and multiplies operational flexibility. The current Indian strike fleet is limited by small payloads and the need for aerial refueling, whereas the B-1B can fly intercontinental missions, loiter for hours, and launch massed attacks in a single sortie. The blend of indigenous missile designs and imported strike platforms creates synergy, expanding India's ability to conduct large-scale strikes, suppress enemy air defenses, and impose substantial strategic costs with minimal exposure. Beyond simply increasing firepower, the psychological impact of a credible long-range bomber force is profound. The visibility of the B-1B, its reputation garnered from years of U.S. operations over hostile territory, and its technological invulnerability against most legacy air defense systems, act as a force multiplier, dissuading adversaries from risky escalatory moves. In conclusion, the ongoing discussions around Indian acquisition or lease of the B-1B Lancer bombers mark the dawn of a new era in South Asian air power, with profound implications for regional stability, deterrence, and Indo-US operations. The B-1B's unmatched payload, speed, long-range standoff missile capacity, and operational flexibility will allow India to fully realize its new doctrine of deep, precise, and proportional retaliation against any threat, while minimizing risk to pilots and platforms. Drawing lessons from Russia's bomber-led campaigns against Ukraine and U.S. strategic bombing history, India's leap into the standoff strike bomber club positions it not only as a regional hegemon but as a global air power in shaping future doctrines. The days of risking limited fighter payloads for high-risk border penetrations are gone. The future of Indian retribution, deterrence, and influence will fly on the wings of its heavy bombers, striking from afar, with surgical precision and overwhelming force.